Yeah, so let's go and do some rapid fire. As I've mentioned, the past week was Davos 2023. A lot of interesting things have happened, unfolded. So I'm going to do some rapid fire. We're not going to linger too long in one topic, but we're going to go into multiple things that I think you guys will find very fascinating. If you guys have been watching our channel, you guys all know, some of the topics we've been talking about. So we're going to get some new developments. But Davos 2023, very interesting. Again, this event isn't done, so we'll kind of recap tomorrow when we do our live Q&A, 11 a.m. Central. But one of the main reasons why we pay attention to Davos 2023 is mainly because, the individuals that attend these events are influential figures that can impact and affect our lives, right? These are U.S. congressmen, congresswomen. We got literally the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, who has the authority and control of trillions of dollars of investments that ultimately trickle down to, different businesses decisions right here at home in the United States. I mean, you also have CEO Pfizer, Albert Bourla, which we'll talk about in just one sec. But we all know, Pfizer's role during the last 2 years and how we all feel about it. So I actually have a story about Albert Bourla in just one sec. Very interesting stuff. So it's really important for us to have our ears to the ground as far as what's happening in Davos and what they're talking about, because eventually this is like the dream list, right? What they talk about at Davos is like, oh, we want this happening in our country. We want this happening as a law. We want these happening and affecting our people. And what's interesting is that none of these people are, well, not all of them, but most of these people are unelected people, right?
I'd say the majority of them are unelected.
100%.
Well, I think a great way to put it is that the positions of power that they hold have never been given to them by the people.
Correct. Right.
It's always been through political tactics.
It was not a democratic process, right? Even then, I mean, you got... Anyways, but let's go into one of the topics. So one of the main things that they continue to bring up, a majority of the conversation that they had was climate change, climate crisis, right? So in one panel, the panel discussion was called Deglobalization or Reglobalization, and it's funny. There was a woman named Nigar Woods, a professor at Oxford, who says that there needs to be a carbon price for companies around the world for a true energy transition. That's the word she chose to use, carbon price, quote unquote. Now, what she was inferring, she said rules and goalposts, we need a carbon price. You know what that tells me? She wants a global carbon tax. And basically, a global carbon tax to basically motivate all the companies to choose and make decisions that are ESG friendly. And we've talked about that several times in our channel. But she says now is a time that all countries around the world participating in the World Economic Forum should make carbon tax required. What do you guys think about that?
Well, if you're going to implement a global carbon tax, then you got to set a standard, because we talked about on this show before how some of the most dangerous countries for climate change, quote unquote, are the ones that Klaus Schwab says we must all model, right? Like China, right? Like they're literally number one.
Methane, pollution.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want to talk about carbon,
and no EPA at all, I'm sure.
None at all. Like they do not care, right? I mean, they are like Chinese McGregor. It's like, we don't give up, right? But I mean, like the U.S. is like 19th considering the amount of output that we have.
Yeah,
right?
we're actually not bad.
Correct. So if you're gonna put a carbon tax, I mean, what's the global standard you're gonna place, right? I mean, are you guys paying the carbon tax for the private jets that you guys
what's
are taking?
Interesting is that as soon as she said that, there was a government minister from Hungary who says, hey, Hungary is actually a very pro-nuclear energy. I was actually very surprised to hear that. I'm like, wow, this guy's at Davos talking about how proud that Hungary is becoming a pro-nuclear. And he's like, well, we don't just talk about green. We do green by going nuclear energy. And I'm like, hey, amen and hallelujah. What was interesting was as soon as he was done saying his piece, it seemed like it was a reporter on the crowd who basically stood up and said, hey, isn't Hungary not a fully free country? And I'm like, shots fired, man. I'm like, and then the guy, and the minister is like, you know what? Actually, contrary to the liberal mainstream media, we are a very conservative Christian nation. And I'm like,
well, that's like a lot of Eastern European countries are like that.
Yeah. Same thing with Romania, right?
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to hear, like, there's one guy in this climate conversation that says, you know what, no, we're nuclear power. Nuclear power is the way to go. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with him, right? I believe in nuclear energy. And then you got literally someone right there initially that says, you know what, isn't hungry. So basically insult to this guy and saying, you're not a free country.
Yeah.
You're not one of us. What are you talking? What do you know about green energy? So I was very, very surprised at that. But related to the climate, there was actually a separate discussion kind of related to the carbon tax and basically a panel that says we need to strengthen governments to create stricter climate laws, and we need governments to litigate companies and individuals who violate such climate laws. So this is you see the theme here, right? Carbon tax is a way to make a friendly ESG decision by these companies. And now these panels, these figures are asking governments to have a stronger rules to protect the flowers and the trees and the nature.
I mean, it just seems like a broken record, man. It's like they just kind of keep saying these things over and over again, but they don't really have a plan to actually do this, right? Because my question is, well, what are your semantics? What are the details that you guys are going to roll out to be able to change that?
And a lot of it is just, hey, governments collect more taxes, punish those companies that don't make ESG decisions, and invest more ESG. That's it. That's really their answer to really, as I've kind of dug into some of these videos of the actual sessions at the Davos. Very interesting. Which, by the way, Greta Thunberg, the champion of climate change, climate crisis, aka I like to call her Poison Ivy from the DC Comics, was actually
I don't know who that is.
Was actually in Davos. If you don't know,
she fought Batman.
Yeah, she fought
Batman.
She's like the Mother Nature in DC. Yeah, but even Greta is seeing through what the World Economic Forum. There's a Twitter video, and we'll put all of our links down below in our show notes. But this is literally what she says at Davos. This is really interesting.
Did she say, "I dare you"? How dare you?
No, she says, and I quote: "We are right now in Davos. Basically, the people who are mostly fueling the destruction of the planet."
She said that?
Yes. The people who are at the core of the climate crisis, the people who are investing in fossil fuel, and et cetera, and et cetera. And yet somehow these are the people who we are relying on, or we are relying on these people to solve the problem. And basically, she goes up for about a minute, and she says all this World Economic Forum BS is absurd.
Maybe
even Greta is seeing through this World Economic Forum.
She might be more similar to Andrew Tate than she would like to. Did you guys see the video of her getting fake arrested?
Yeah,
I saw
ridiculous.
that. Well, you know what? It's funny.
Ridiculous.
Like when you talk about this stuff, like maybe her heart's actually into that, and like they just manipulated her. But what if, like, in a crazy world, she becomes like this revolutionary leader?
You know, I gotta respect her in the way that she actually believes this, right?
Right.
She's not some of these other ESG, BS, toxic fueling people who says, "Oh, we need ESG because we need to invest more in Chevron. We need to invest more in Google." Right?
She's not using climate change to advance another agenda.
She's not shilling.
That is what I actually will respect about this lady, this chick, Greta. I'm like, yeah, you're about it, man.
Yeah, and again, I disagree with many of the methodologies she's proposing, but I will respect her zeal towards what she truly believes in. And hey, mad props to that, right? The thing that I don't respect about the whole climate crisis is people are using this as a front to raise money to basically fuel their own, what actually Greta says, corporate interest and corporate profit.
I think that's the whole thing with climate change too, right? Because I mean, I do believe that there are some aspects where there's validity, right? Like, and it's kind of like with anything, right? Yeah. With anything that typically is a big topic, a good number of it's valid. The other has been made up to kind of more so push an agenda.
Correct.
That's not what we're about here. We're about truth at this channel. But, it just seems like one of the, you either have on one side these politicians who are using climate change, ESG to advance their agenda. But on the other hand, you have a lot of these people who are typically younger, who are talkers, and unfortunately, they're not doing something about it.
Right.
They kind of just sit there and complain.
And listen, I from a Christian perspective, I'll give you the perspective from my own faith, opinion. Even the Bible, Jesus predicts that the sea will be tossed and turning, right? There will be, it will be as if the nature somehow, you're gonna see earthquakes, you're gonna see the sea tossing and turning, which I believe is instigating at the climate change. So I'm not surprised by it. It has already been predicted by Jesus, and it is meant to be to what I believe.
Sure. Yeah.
But moving along from the climate change, the next topic of discussion that caught my attention was about curbing disinformation. Now, it's really interesting because the panel discussion is called "The Clear and Present Danger of Disinformation." The irony of this is this conversation was hosted by CNN.
But not only just CNN, but Brian Stelter.
Brian Stelter, yes, he's a former host at.
Who is Brian Stelter? I don't know who Brian Stelter is.
He's an ex CNN
who got
anchor,
fired.
Correct. And we all know CNN.
Fake news,
right?
Fake news.
And I thought it was very interesting that they chose him.
Why did they do that?
To host a conversation about disinformation. But what stood out to me was two panel members. One was Arthur Gregg Salzberg, which is the chairman of New York Times, which he basically was there to defend New York Times. And we all know that obviously, New York Times, they were completely wrong about Hunter Biden's laptop story. They, admittedly or by omission, told a lot of disinformation, right? They failed to cover and they failed to exercise integrity in actually keeping our leaders accountable. That's not journalism, that's propaganda. And he was there to basically defend his honor. Another instance, there was a lady named Vera Jurva, and I'm pronouncing it wrong, but she's the vice president for, quote unquote, values and transparency at the European Union Executive Commission. But she basically went on in the speech instigating and suggesting that United States will soon also have illegal hate speech laws. So basically, the First Amendment will be done.
I'm sorry, but if you're European,
you have no say.
You have no say. Stay away from us.
Go home.
I'm willing to have an open conversation with you guys and talk about why the First Amendment's so important. But seriously, any kind of brass from the EU can really just kick rocks when it comes to America.
By the way, Europe always had this issue with freedom.
It's like quasi freedom.
They've always, I don't know why, but the governments of Europe always hated freedom. The moment where France declared that they're going to be a republic, the French Revolution, people started hating. They went war against France. They didn't like this whole idea of republic. Democratic republic, systems. They love monarchy, and clearly the World Economic Forum runs like a monarchy, where Klaus Schwab is at the top. And but anyhow,
go ahead, Sam.
So again, just going through the rapid fire as I close this out. But on a positive note, I think the mainstream people are finally catching on. In fact, on a positive note, Rebel News reporter Avi Yemeni was at Davos. In fact, the whole Rebel News team, I think, was at Davos.
Yeah, they were.
And they actually confronted Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, and literally for 10, 15 minutes went at him and said, hey, why did you say that the vaccines were 100% effective? How many booster shots people need to take for you to be happy? Are you under investigation? Right? He went just on. And what Albert Bourla, all he could say was, thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.
No, I don't even think he said that, dude. He was quiet. I watched that video right before we started, and I'm like, yo, he said nothing at all.
You know what confused me the most was why weren't there any security guards for him?
It was like he had a couple handlers or something, a couple female handlers. But I just feel like, and I told Daniel this right before the show, I'm like, if you got somebody who was absolutely jacked, looking like Dave Bautista or something like that, having him a microphone, do you think these people would talk up?
Oh no, yeah.
Would they run away? Really confronted? No, I'm sure Avi is very, very in shape. Yeah. I follow him. Avi, you're awesome, dude.
But we gotta get Liver King. Yeah, let's be real. We need Liver King to go out there shirtless in Davos. Hey, brother.
The more the mainstream is talking about it, I know Fox News has been talking about it. I get it. Fox News is a Republican right-wing platform, so some of you guys that are very libertarian may not trust it. But the fact that it's front and center, and Elon's talking about it, Twitter's blowing up about it. It's actually number 2 right now in trending for the Davos event. And also the other story that I wanted to bring up is the young global leader graduate and a proud Klaus Schwab student, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, just announced her resignation yesterday.
Let's give a round of applause.
Citing,
applause.
Hey guys, look, she's quiet quitting and she's doing what she has to do.
Well, citing that she's quote unquote burned out, but in reality, I think she's under investigation. She actually was caught with a hot mic, insulting her opposition leader, calling him an arrogant wussy. I'll say the soft version of it for YouTube, wussy. And a few days later, she's deciding to resign. So again, I think the World Economic Forum, as time goes on, they're showing their true colors, showing their true cards. People are like, oh my gosh, we need to wake up to this. Something is up, right? So the good news is, I think people are waking up to this, and saying enough is enough. This World Economic Forum, we should not, we should not have unelected people, corporate overlords deciding how we need to live our life. Get government oligarchs and corporate oligarchs out of the way. I think we're finally at that point. We're at a tipping point. But last thing I want to mention, very interesting. Mm-hmm. I know we talked about, with Dr. Fuelmick a couple weeks ago. He was the first one kind of that threw out the suggestion that the CIA's involvement with the World Economic Forum, right? Well, this year, Henry Kissinger himself was at Davos virtually to speak.
What a surprise.
And he had his perspective about the current war. So again, very interesting things that are happening in Davos.
Now, did you know this, though? It's funny that he's there because guess who else was there? There was two people that are very important to our security.
Who was there, Nick?
Oh, gee.
Please, tell us.
The FBI director.
Yes.
And I forgot her name. Obviously not important enough, but it's an important position. Director of National Intelligence. Both were in attendance there.
Wow.
Very cool. Good for them.
So
I hope they flew commercial. Hey guys, what you just saw was a clip from our weekly live show that we do every single Thursday. Now, if you guys enjoyed the clip, please like and subscribe to our channel for more content like that.
And be sure to tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m. as we go live to the show. Interact with us. Have questions and comments ready. We will have a great time together. So be sure to join us on Thursday at 7 o'clock.
We'll see you guys there.